I didn't learn my lesson, and that's putting things very lightly. I moved to the Philippines in 2008. I was 52 years old and had around $500,000. I had a private pension I was going to be able to claim from back home in the UK that was going to give me around $800 a month in 3 years' time. I'd been to the Philippines before lots of times. It was always my dream to retire there. It was my dream to retire there as soon as I could. In 2008, that dream became a reality, and that feeling of exhilaration when I stepped off the plane in Manila as a new retiree was a feeling that I'd been waiting to experience ever since my first trip to the Philippines just under 2 decades ago. I already knew where I wanted to live, and that was Angeles City. I didn't spend long in Manila, just getting myself set up for this new life, and I made my way to Angeles about a week after touching down in the Philippines, and that's when I thought my life was finally going to start. I found a place to live, very affordable, well within budget, and I got on with the business of living. I wasn't in Angeles for the culture. Anybody who says that is lying. I was there because I really wanted to let my hair down and party and enjoy the things that I missed out on enjoying from when I was working at home. It was only about 3 months after arriving in Angeles when the inevitable happened. I met a girl from the island of Leyte in one of the bars. She was the most breathtaking girl I'd ever seen in the Philippines, and I told myself that she had to be mine. At the time, I felt like we were having a whirlwind romance, as insane as that might sound to anybody who thinks getting into a relationship with a girl that works in a bar is something that you just don't do. But that's what it felt like to me. I did take things with her slowly. I didn't ask her to marry me straight away, but since I arrived, all the way up to the beginning of 2010, our relationship flourished. We travelled together to some beautiful beach locations. We spent every waking moment together until at the start of 2010, when we went together to Bohol, I asked her to marry me. 3 months later, I found myself visiting her family for the first time in Leyte. I'd spoken to them on the phone numerous times before, and they seemed like very nice people. I was quite taken aback by the fact that she had 7 siblings. She was the youngest out of 8 children, and I'd never seen a family that big before, and I found it quite strange in the sense that they were very, very poor, poverty stricken, you could go as far as saying, so why were they having so many children? Obviously, we now know why, but you would have thought that people in a position like that would have perhaps thought otherwise. You would learn as time goes by and you understand the Philippines more that people in that part of the world tend to have more children because they believe that when they age and get older, their children will be able to look after them. So, the more the better. It's a mentality like that that is very alien to what I was used to, and it's something that you don't pick up on at the time. The wedding went well, I thought. I was happy, she seemed happy, and I made the decision that many guys make when they meet someone like that. That decision was to build a house very close to her family's house in Leyte. Fast forward approximately 2 years, around the end of 2012 this was, and that relationship imploded around me. I invested about $200,000 into that relationship, and I'd probably already spent another $50,000 since I'd arrived in the Philippines. Although I was now getting my pension, it wasn't a lot of money, and I wasn't really concerned. That wasn't until I found out some things about my wife, which did give me that moment when you realize you made a really stupid mistake. I found out that she had kids that she never told me about. I found out that she cheated on me a number of times when I was alone in the house I built, and I found out that she really wasn't the person I thought she was. I wanted to get divorced, but that wasn't possible in the Philippines. I wanted to do something about the money I invested into the house, but that became clear it was lost. And it was at the end of 2012 when I just left, devastated about what had happened, completely destroyed, not only at the financial loss with the house, and the car that was left behind, all the money I spent on her, and the financial assistance I provided to her family. I was also devastated about the fact that I was no longer together with my wife. I still loved her, I still cared about her, and it took a long time to get over it. The thing that I got very wrong, though, when I was starting to feel better, and I had got myself back to Angeli's, was that I thought I just found the wrong one. That was what happened. That's why everything went wrong. I just found the wrong girl. I thought that the relationship that I was in with her was perfectly normal. Just because she was 30 years younger than me, this was the Philippines, this was normal. I'd been going to the Philippines for over 20 years, and this is what I did when I went to the Philippines. Many of the guys I met throughout the years married girls younger than them. Some of them stayed in the Philippines to live, some of them took their girlfriends or wives back home with them to where they were from, and I can't remember ever meeting a guy in his 50s or 60s who had a relationship with someone from the Philippines who was a similar age to him. Age gaps were at least 15 or 20 years. I mean, they were with people that I hung around with, so that was something I did wrong. I just told myself I found the wrong one. What I needed was the right one. The right one wouldn't cost me half of my life savings and investments in ridiculous things that I couldn't even own. The right one would make my life complete and make me feel better about things. I simply didn't learn my lesson in the slightest. That being said, getting into another relationship was the furthest thing from my mind. I was more focused on the fact that I wanted to get over the last one, live a little, spend time with more girls because I was now single, and I lived quite happily throughout the whole of 2013, throughout the whole of 2014, and while I had quite a lot of relationships with a few girls during this time, nothing ever felt like it should be taken further. Nothing felt like I should try to take things further, that is. 2015, I got into a relationship with a girl. I probably spent 8 months with her, but that ended before things got too serious, and I couldn't back out. All the time, though, I'm telling myself, you just found the wrong one. If you found the right one, everything will click, everything will fall into place, and everything will be perfect. 2016 was just another year of living. My money is going down slowly, but I'm not spending a lot. I'm getting in about $800 a month, and what I had left was bringing in about half again, so I was only spending into my savings a couple of $100s a month. I had more than enough to continue my life indefinitely, if things continued. It was 2017 though, around 10 years just under since I'd moved to the Philippines. I was already in my 60s. I was already getting a bit bored of the bars and the nightlife and everything in Angeles, but I just didn't know what to do. I'm not saying I stopped going to the bars, but I didn't get that same enjoyment from them anymore. One thing that did happen, though, around the start of 2017, was I met a girl who gave me that feeling that I had been lacking from all the other girls I'd met throughout my time in the Philippines, even my wife. I was still married to her, but the feelings I had for this girl, a very mature 21, was like finally, all this waiting, all these bad relationships, it's all been for this. I found it quite amusing, although I guess it really wasn't, but she happened to be from Leyte just like my wife. Luckily, she was from a very different part of the island, so the chance of running into my wife if things progressed with us in the future was not going to happen. I really missed that house that I built with my wife. I loved the nature. I loved being close to the beach. I loved having a garden. Everything about it I missed. And I just simply couldn't have that in Angeles City as much as I wanted it. I wasn't thinking about houses or anything at this point in time. I was just thinking about trying to solidify this relationship with this amazing girl that had only just started working in the bar a few weeks before I went in. How do I know? You might ask. Because I went into that bar many times before and never saw her. I went into lots of other bars and never saw her in any of those either, and I would recognize a girl like her if I saw her before. It just seemed like she was exactly what I was looking for. And the thing was, it seemed like I was exactly what she was looking for. Someone to sweep her off her feet, someone to look after her, someone that she could love, someone that she could commit her life to, someone that would love her and respect her. Everything we talked about when we met and over the following weeks, the more time we spent together, seemed like we both had shared dreams. We both talked about how in our past relationships, the people we were with in these relationships always had ulterior motives, always hid things from us, and she seemed to be going through the same kind of pain as I. It didn't take me very long to come to the conclusion that she was the girl of my dreams. She was the girl that had waited all my life for, and she was right there telling me that she loved me, telling me how lucky she felt to have met me, and how she never thought she would have such fortune to be able to meet a guy like me. A few months after meeting her, she was living with me in the place I was renting in Angeles City, and life just felt like it had finally come together after all those years in the Philippines, and after everything went wrong with my wife. I would have to use the term whirlwind romance again to describe this relationship with her. It was like we could finish each other's sentences. And I know you might hate me for saying that because we were different generations, but as I've already said, this is what the Philippines was there for. All the people I met, this is what they did. It wasn't strange or abnormal, it was just a done thing. Because I was getting tired of Angeles City, I loved the place and I didn't feel like I needed to leave, but I did feel like it was time to settle down and live the retired life in my 60s, which I expected to be living when my wife turned into the person who I didn't think she would be. The biggest problem was I wasn't able to get married to this girl because I was still married to my wife, but she understood that because this was part of the Philippines. She said, as long as we love each other, that's all that matters, and she always professed her love for me, and I did for her. I hadn't loved anything or anyone as much as I loved her in my whole life. I would have died for her. As long as there were certain stipulations that went along with that. And I think I was just blinded by the fact that she would be the girl that would appear in my dreams if I ever dreamed about going into a bar and meeting a girl. She was basically that. After we'd spent a few months living together, we decided to go away. I wanted to take her to the beach, take her out of Angeles, and spend some quality time with her in a different setting. We went to Boracay. I'd never actually been to that part of the Philippines before, and it was definitely beautiful. The beaches were some of the best I'd seen, although I did find it was a little bit too touristy for my liking. Lots of the tourists there seemed to be very different to the sorts of tourists I was used to in Angeles City, and I think that really put a bit of a damper on our time there. I felt a lot bigger draw to the parts of the Philippines where there weren't many tourists. For example, where my wife was from and where we built that house. It was very picturesque. The beaches there were not as good as the ones on Boracay, but they were isolated. I guess that came with the issue that there weren't beach bars that you could go to for a drink, but you could take a cool box with ice and beers and sit by yourself in the shade under a tree, reading a book and looking at all the surroundings, wondering, why are there no other people here? I asked her to get married to me when we were on Boracay. Of course, I was already married, and this wasn't going to be possible, but I thought we could be married in name. Not meaning she would get my name, but we could just say she's my wife, and she could say I'm her husband, even though we wouldn't have any legal paperwork to prove it. She said that was fine. She said she cared about me so much, she didn't care what happened before. She actually said if that didn't happen, it wouldn't have brought me to her, so she said it was all worth it, and that made me feel good. I felt like I was able to call her my wife when she really wasn't, and she felt the same. Things just didn't feel right though when we got back to Angeles City. I felt like I didn't want to be there anymore, and I guess I can't even call her my wife, but she said she was happy anywhere with me. We did spend some time there, a good few months, and she asked me if I would like to go and visit her family. I'd not been back to Leyte ever since I left that time before, but I'd said I would love to go, because I felt like I wanted to meet her family and become a part of it. I definitely considered her to be part of my family, so it only felt right to go and meet everyone and show my good intentions and show how much I appreciated and loved her. It did feel a bit surreal going back to Leyte, but I didn't care because I just wanted to make her happy, and it made me happy going somewhere like that too. Luckily, as I said, she was from the complete opposite side of the island to my wife, so that was okay. And when we got there, I can remember spending a night in Tacloban before heading to her family's place the next day. It was even more picturesque than where I'd been before. It was hard to beat, but here somehow had managed that. The natural beauty in the Philippines is second to none, and you will see it everywhere you go, and here was a prime example. The first day we got there, we went to walk to the local beach. It was only a 5-minute walk away from the family's house, but it didn't look like a beach, like this should have been in a place like that. In any other country in the world, there would have been five-star resorts situated close by, luxury restaurants and beach bars dotted along it. But here, it was completely deserted. I was told there was some kind of event taking place in the barangay in a few days' time, and there would be people at the beach, like having a pop-up shop selling food and drink, and it was an event that happened every year. We were only meant to be there for one night, but we decided to stay on for that. I was able to get used to staying in the family's house. That was the same when I was there with my wife. The facilities were lacking in comparison to what I was used to, but I persevered through that because I felt like I was being welcomed as part of the family. Her parents were considerably younger than me, but they appeared on the surface to be older than me. Perhaps because of the work they did in their lives or whatever reason it was, but I was definitely young for my age, and her parents were old for their age, and she was also old for her age. There's no point me trying to beat around the bush here, but there was nothing when I was there that made me think that I was doing anything wrong or stupid or concerning. I'd been in the Philippines now for nearly 10 years, and I only witnessed things like this. I'd never seen everything like this before, and there was no concerns. It felt different to how it was with my wife. It's very important. As I said, a guy of my age with someone from the Philippines of a similar age, that was something that wasn't done. It wasn't a done thing. It wasn't normal. It was meant to be a big gap, and this pointed to that, and everything felt right. When that local event happened, we went to it. It wasn't as big as I expected it to be, but this was just great. A beach where you had to walk down some makeshift steps to get to it, but it was fun nonetheless. I just imagined what it would be like if they had a beach bar at this place all the time. After that, though, it was time for us to return to Angeles City, but I just didn't want to go. I knew in terms of my money that investing in a house would be difficult because I needed what I had in order to live, although I did have my pension coming in, which I was starting to lean on as being more than enough money to live somewhere like this because the amount of money you need to spend is quite marginal. We did return to Angeles because where my place was, all my stuff was there, and also it would give me time to process things and try to decide where we were going to settle down. I was ready to move away from the party atmosphere. I was ready to basically live in the house that I built with my wife, although that went to her, so we needed another one. I was speaking to my new wife, let's just call her my wife from now, saying how much I loved where she was from, how much I loved being able to spend time with all these beautiful beaches when no one's there. I just felt like I was becoming part of the community. Just walking from her family's house to the beach, that was fun. But it wasn't a tiny community. You could walk a little bit more and there were still restaurants there. It was mainly local food, but there were places that sold burgers. Not burgers like you would be used to, but they were edible and it was still something. I was starting to think, because I was so in love with my new wife, in a way that this was different to how it was with my old wife. The way she was with me reaffirmed all these beliefs, because my old wife had never been like her. Okay, she was still loving and caring, but my new wife was so different. It was as if she was put on this earth purely to please, purely to be with me, and I felt like that was what my purpose was too, just to be with her, to look after her, give her a good life, and in return, she would be at my every beck and call, but not in any kind of disrespectful way. We weren't in Angeles for very long, when I spent a week or two kind of with my own thoughts, thinking things through. Should I go ahead and build a house with her? We wouldn't need a big one. I definitely spent too much money on the last one, but if we just had something where we could live that was comfortable, that had all the amenities inside that would make it comfortable, then we would be able to live somewhere that I actually wanted to live. I felt a place like that was more conducive to a peaceful retirement. I guess because I've been slowly eating through my savings. This was part of the plan and I wasn't alarmed by this because I had more than enough to last. But I had enough to build a house, to buy another car, because it was clear that we would need one there, and there would be enough money left over to supplement my pension. I definitely found in Angeles the amount of money I spent there was more than when I was with her on Leyte. It was just the different kind of things you did. In Angeles, if you wanted to go out, you would find yourself drawn towards the bars, because that was just what was there. A girl would go with me, and we would be sitting having a few drinks, maybe a drink for another girl that comes over, just talking, and then we'd go out for a meal and return back to our place after having spent not a lot of money, but enough that you felt it. It was different, though, because on Leyte, if you went out, it was to a local place, therefore it was considerably cheaper. And while there weren't bars there, I was getting tired of the bars anyway, and I already felt the bars had served their purpose, because they brought me to her. I was starting to think if I invested around 100,000 into everything I needed, I would have just under that left. Surely, if I add that together with my pension across the next even 20 years, that would be enough. And also, I should be getting the state pension at some point. I wasn't too far away from that, not too many years to think about it. I was thinking about all of this without even raising it with her. I didn't want to say anything until I was 100% sure. But when we returned from one evening out, I was starting to feel tired and bored of things. I'd been bored of things for a long time. I decided, though, that I'd had enough. How would you like to go and live in Leyte? The first thing she said was she'd love to, but it might be difficult to find a house to rent close to where we want to be. I said we could build our own place, buy a car, and just start living. When I said that, it was like I said something that she'd dreamed of me saying without her having to ask me, and she said it was her dream. It was my dream too at that moment, just to live somewhere like that, because I loved it. I loved everything about it. I was never concerned about how remote it was. I was never concerned about how long it would take to go and buy something that you couldn't get locally. That didn't bother me. I just wanted to be at one with myself, at one with my new wife, and at one with nature, and my own thoughts. I was at the age where that was all I wanted. So that's what we decided to do. Her family put us up while the house was being built. I did a little bit of an extension, only a rudimentary one, to their place so it was comfortable, and it did feel very weird spending 4 months together with her family, but they welcomed me with open arms. Everything was perfect, and when our place was finally ready, which, including the land and the construction, everything inside the house and the car that we bought, was pretty much $100,000. But when we moved in, I finally felt like I found my forever home. I had about $90,000 left in liquid capital, my $800 a month coming in, and my state pension in a few years. Everything felt like it did fit into place, and I was very fortunate to think about my old wife and how she did what she did, because that brought me to the love of my life. She really was the love of my life. The age gap made no difference. Age is just a number. There's no use trying to deny that. She was my dream, and the thing was that made me feel even better was that I was her dream. I was what she wanted, and that was great. I wasn't even nervous that anything could go wrong because I'd convinced myself nothing's going to go wrong. It only went wrong last time because she was the wrong one. Now I had the right one, and I felt fortunate to have found her because in another few years I wouldn't have even wanted to have been in Angeli City by myself anymore. I was getting so tired of it. We're still spending every waking moment together. If we go to the local town, we're going together. If we're going shopping, we're going together. If she wants to go and visit her family, we're going together, and it's exactly how I liked it. We developed a really good little system. Often we would go to the beach together. There would be a shaded area where we would sit. The whole place would be deserted, and it would be so private, and we could take our own drinks in a cool box full of ice, and I just marvelled at how fortunate I was. This went on for over 1 year. Life is everything I thought it would be, and how much I'm spending at the time is well within my means. I'm probably not even spending $800 a month at this point, and although I am giving my new wife an allowance so she can buy what she needs, and I'm paying for all the bills we have, and for some insurance, although it wasn't the best coverage, but it covered certain things. Aside from that, I'm not really spending money on anything because there's nothing to spend close by and I don't feel like I need to spend to be happy. That was one of the things about Angeli's that was difficult too. Everything was on your doorstep. If you wanted to do something, you could just go and do it, but you'd end up spending money. I guess at this moment, I was only spending $700 a month, and that included giving a little bit extra to my girl every time she wanted something. She never seemed to want anything extreme apart from a nice phone, never seemed to want anything excessive, she just seemed to be happy. This continued even more. The months are passing, everything is perfect. Life is great, life is unbelievable really, because if things continue like this, I will be able to see out my days in paradise, although I was starting to be concerned about the future for my new wife. if I was no longer around. I wasn't paying too close attention to this because I still felt quite healthy. I mean, I was. Aside from having a number of drinks every now and then, I didn't smoke. I kept myself fit, and I wasn't overweight. I tried to eat healthy, as and when I could. I didn't have any medical issues, so I still felt like I had a good amount of time left, a considerable amount of time. But if 20 years passed and I was in my 80s, my wife would be only in her 40s, so I was being the good husband I thought I was being by thinking about her future. I am starting to pay a lot of attention to it, but it's not like it's a daily thing, maybe thinking about it once a week and maybe once a month, something like that. But it was something that was always there. I felt like I'd been there long enough to see any negative sides to her, and she hadn't showed me any, not one. I really felt that to be the case. But then we had COVID, which was a difficult time. I will admit I was someone who was really, really scared about COVID. At the time, it felt like the world was going to come to an end. At the time, it felt like all your priorities shift, all your understandings shift, and this was terrifying me. I know that if I share my opinions about this, quite a lot of people will ridicule me because it turned out that the whole thing wasn't exactly as bad as it was made out to be. But at the time, I was really worrying. I was thinking, because of my age, if something happened to me, what about my wife? And I think that accelerated my thoughts that I needed to set my wife up with something in case something happened to me. My wife had spoken about wanting to do things on quite a lot of occasions, but it was just talk. It wasn't like she was saying these things to force me to do anything that I didn't want to do. It wasn't like she was saying, if we don't do this, I will change. That wasn't the case. She never changed. She was always perfect. She was always how I needed her to be, for me to be able to function my best. It was always me, though, not her, thinking about her future. It was COVID that really made me think even more about this. That was the first time since we moved there. We've been there for a long time now, when I said to her, is there anything that you feel that you want to do? Although she had mentioned things in the past, this was me directly asking her, is there anything you feel you could do to add to our lives here that could make everything better? And also, I want you to be okay when something happens to me. Most definitely, that was what caused everything to go wrong. It was the thing that caused everything to go wrong. There's no other way to say it. Because while it was me that was bringing up all these ideas, it was never my intention to invest a lot of money into everything. Maybe just a little shop that she could have that could bring in a little bit of extra money. Just enough to survive if something happened to me. But it was clear that she seemed to want to do something bigger. And we both promised we would think about different things and talk about it as the days and weeks went by. We weren't in any hurry. It was just, let's make sure that she will be okay. Thinking about wanting to make sure she was okay was just who I was. I loved her more than anything, and that became the thing that consumed me, getting her set up for life. This was purely based because of COVID and my sheer terror at the thought of it. I would wake up with cold sweats in the middle of the night, even going to look around the house to make sure there was nobody with COVID sneaking in and trying to pass it on. I was insane, I know, and that's crazy, but your mind does play tricks on you, and I was buying into all the dangers of COVID, and I guess I was just a perfect idiot to spread what many people would later call the misinformation that the governments were spreading. I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't be able to fight back to anyone who would say that to me. Because we were quite close to the beach, because we could walk to the local town, and it wasn't a tiny town, they had things happening there, my wife mentioned that perhaps she could open a shop. It was only about a 15-minute walk away, maybe even a 10-minute walk away from where we lived. You could drive in no time at all. It was kind of a bit inland away from the beach area, but they did have shops there, a few restaurants, a few places to go for a drink, and a few more shops. My wife said she could open a shop there too. Again, it's all because of my ideas. My idea to make sure she was okay. When things were okay during COVID, that's when we spent a lot of time going and looking around. We'd look around the town, thinking about ideas. We would go to bigger towns further along the coast and see what they had that was lacking in the town that we were closest to. I mean, town might not be the right word to use to describe the kind of size it was. It wasn't that big. But one thing that seemed to be quite popular in many of the slightly bigger places were shops that sold mobile phones and accessories to go along with them. We went to look at these shops and examples of them, and they didn't sell expensive phones like iPhones, but they sold things that local people might be able to save up to and afford for. It just seemed to be an idea that my wife was really interested in. The thing that she cared about the most was always having her brand new iPhone, always had to have that, and the things that went along with it, and it seemed like it could be a good idea. So I left my wife, and I keep calling her my wife, but she wasn't. I wish she was. But I left her up to it, come up with a business plan, and to come up with how she thinks this would work to make money. And when I left her to it, I could see how serious she was taking things. She was doing a lot of research, always trying to contact the supplier of these phones. She wasn't stupid. She was really doing things that I would consider to be the right way. Her enthusiasm was so great. But while initially what I'd expected to do was perhaps rent her a small place, I would pay for that and she could keep the money coming in, and I would inform her about how much the rent was, and eventually she would need to pay that herself. But her enthusiasm was so contagious, it felt like what we had here, if she did it what she wanted to do, it would be great for her. With that, she said, maybe we should buy a place in town. There were a few little pieces of land for sale, so if we bought one of those and built something, that would be better. It would be more of a firm investment, and we wouldn't need to pay rent to anybody. I always pointed to the fact that I had my $800 a month coming in, which was enough to live on, and I wasn't spending more than that. So that was the reason by what I did next, which was to agree to purchase one of these pieces of land very close to a restaurant. That restaurant was close to a very local style bakery, which was close to a place that had other shops selling drinks and snacks, and one selling vegetables and meat. Lots of things there. But they didn't have a mobile phone shop. That's why I bought the land. About $20,000 I spent on that, and $40,000 constructing the shop. It wasn't that small. It had a place upstairs where you could have lived if you needed to, and it had the downstairs area. It was all tiled nicely, it was all clean and fresh, and it was brilliant, and I left it up to her to decide which phones she wanted to sell. She had done a lot of research. We'd been around to lots of the other towns looking at the kind of things they sold, and obviously, everything seemed very good. There were a few instances where it seemed that some of these companies that sold phones, many of them, I've never heard of the brands before, but they would partner with you and put their items there, and you didn't have to pay for them up front. But my wife didn't want to do it that way. She wanted to sell a multitude of different brands, so I gave her money to stock up on whatever she wanted. I wasn't really very involved, so I don't know exactly what she was doing, but I gave her around $10,000 for the first stock. She got a lot of things, phones and accessories, and she opened. Based on how many people lived in the vicinity, it wasn't like she was going to sell a load of phones, but there were enough people where she could sell some, and she could make some money. And that's the thing, she started making money almost straight away. People were buying phones and accessories to go along with them. She actually found someone to help fix people's phones, so she had that service too. And it was like she really landed on her feet with this. I'm not telling you that she's there making $1,000 a month or anything. She wasn't making more than my $800 a month, but I guess she was averaging maybe between $400 or $500 a month in the first months since opening. I really felt like it was a good investment. I felt really proud to have set my wife up, thinking about from here, if she's sensible and clever, she could grow and have another shop doing something else, and then something else. She could build something big. We even agreed that I didn't need to give her any allowance anymore because she was making a lot more than I was giving her, which before was only $150 a month. It was a big investment though, a total of about $70,000, and after it had been open for 6 months and going great, I agreed to give her another $10,000 to kind of improve the business and make things better, and that's what she was able to do. At this moment in time, we were still going to the shop together. Spent a bit of money, as I said, upstairs, not to live there, but I could spend time there and go down to the shop to see how she was, and overall, it was good. We'd go there together in the morning, return home in the evening, and before long, she had someone helping her, one person fixing the phones, another person helping her to sell them, and it wasn't anything like many of these horror stories you hear when someone opens a business in the Philippines with their wife in her local area and everything goes wrong. Things didn't go wrong, things were going great, and I thought that was going to happen indefinitely. That's where I was wrong, and I need anybody thinking about doing anything in the Philippines to listen very carefully to what I have to say. It's one thing to go to the Philippines, fall in love with someone a lot younger than you, go back to her hometown, build a house there and live. One step up from that is what usually happens. The guy gets involved with a business with his wife, things go wrong, he runs out of money, and he has to leave. What I haven't heard about before, and this is what happened to me, and I'll tell you why, it's worse, at least in my mind, is you move to the Philippines, fall in love with someone younger than you go and build a house in her hometown, life is great. Then you start thinking about her future when you're not around. You love her more than anything. The time you've been together, you've always been together, you've never been apart. She's never done anything to give you any cause for concern, and nothing to make you think that she's not who you think she is. You decide you care about her, you worry about her future. That's very important. So you invest in a business, putting in most of what you had left in terms of savings to make sure she will be okay if you're not around. Then the business starts to go okay. Not making a lot of money, but in that part of the Philippines it was good. Not making as much as I got for my pension. So what's the problem? After I gave her that second investment, it started very slowly. You don't need to come with me to the shop today. You can relax in the house. Then I go the following day and then again, and you don't need to go with me. I'm busy, I'll be okay. Then you show up at the shop and she's there. She doesn't really want to talk to you, saying she's busy, concentrating, but she'll come back later. When she comes back, she's more distant. And as time goes by, we're more distant, spending less and less time together, and she's not the same around me anymore. This is a problem I've never heard of. It was like now she had this business, she didn't need me. She wasn't being obvious about it or not nice about it, but it was obvious that she just didn't need me, and it was like I could feel it, and I could tell that she just didn't want me to be there. At least, I thought. She never said that though, and never appeared to say that or feel like that. That was just my feelings. It was my love for her, my thoughts of making sure she was okay, and the success in what I had invested for her to do that pushed us apart. To start with, though, I'm not saying it collapsed quickly, it didn't. But to start with, things were great. But as the months went by, she's not doing badly in terms of how much money she's earning. She's getting more comfortable in the knowledge that she's able to make this money. Then it's the slow deterioration of her affection, of her actions, of how she is with me when we wake up in the morning and when we go to bed at night. But the things she does is completely different to how it was before we did the shop. That's when I really started regretting things. If I'd cared about myself and everything was left as it was, she wouldn't have changed because she wouldn't have been emboldened to. But that also scares me because how she was able to be, basically, my dream girl, not once arguing with me, not once fighting with me, not once going out by herself, not once doing anything. How was she able to do that for such a long time, without fail, day in, day out, ever since we were staying together? That's what she did. If I'd kept the status quo as it was, then it would have been better for me. But caring about her, perhaps more than I should have done, caring about who she was and what would have happened to her in the future, made me do things for her that made her not need me the same way. She never once told me to leave. She never once said I don't want you anymore. She never cheated on me. She didn't do anything like that. She just wasn't this exciting, vivacious, beautiful girl who did everything I wanted as and when I needed her to do it. She didn't want to do that anymore. In fact, it wasn't even close. Sometimes, when I asked her to do something like she used to do before, she would look angry with me. She'd screw her nose up, saying, "Disgusting, I'm not doing that." Yet she was doing everything like that before without fail, until she had this thing over me, which meant that I didn't have anything over her. The thing was, I never thought I had anything over her. I never wanted anything over her. I thought what she was doing for me was because she loved doing that, because she loved making me happy, because I was making her happy. But it was obvious that that wasn't the case at all. That made me understand that all the time that I'd been having the best time in my life, with everything she did with me, every single time she did what she did, she appeared to be loving to do it, yet it wasn't the case. It was all fake. And when you're still living together, and she's not telling me to leave not once, nothing like that. It's like the illusion of the relationship that I thought we were in. It was just an illusion. It was all fake. And that shattered me, because it wasn't fun anymore when she wasn't who I thought she was. One night I did something I still regret. She returned from the shop. She was tired. She'd brought food for both of us, lechon. She brought drinks for both of us, and that side of things was okay. But there are things I can't say because you will look at me in a not nice way, supposedly. But whereas, if she was doing that before, with money that I'd given her to do it, after we'd eaten, we'd maybe go and watch a film together, but she would be a lot more provocative. She would be a lot more revealing. She would always say exciting things. She would always basically do everything that my dream girl would do. Now it's like she's not my dream girl anymore. It's like she doesn't do anything that I loved about her. The things I loved about her, I thought she enjoyed doing. It turned out that obviously she didn't enjoy doing them. and that was when I was starting to get very depressed. One day I had to ask her, why has everything changed? Why aren't you the same as you were until I invested all that money into that shop? I thought if anything, you would be more like my dream, and she was just saying that she was getting older, which was a stupid thing to say because she was still under 25. She said she was too busy with the shop, she wants to make sure that's okay, she doesn't feel the same anymore about the things that she used to do. She said, don't worry, I still love you, but that was the past and everything's fine. But to me, it wasn't fine. I started really hating myself for what I did. She didn't even ask for that shop. I mean, she did, but to start with, I was the one who told her to look for something. She didn't ask for anything before that, because things were good. I was just giving her $150 a month, and she was basically my dream girl every single second of the day on demand. Now, she's not my dream anymore. And that evening, after she'd gone to bed, we were still sleeping in the same bed, but it wasn't the same. I went to the shop, and I pushed over one of the display cases with the phones and stomped on some of the phones, not knowing that she put CCTV in the place, because she called me the following day, when I was at the house, telling me to go to the shop. I did, thinking I could play ignorant, and she showed me the tapes. Why did you do this? That's when I had to tell her I was so disappointed with how she changed. I told her I did what I did for her future. I didn't think that would have a detrimental effect on my now. I did feel guilty, so I gave her some money for the phones I broke, and she just said she will try her best. She didn't know. After about 4 or 5 months of her just being everything other than who I thought she was, I had to leave. I couldn't take it anymore, so I went back to Angeles City. There I remain. I have my state pension and my private pension, which added together is enough money for me to live here, but it's not what I want. I want to be with her, but I couldn't take how she changed because it made me hate myself for being the cause of her change, and I didn't learn my lesson. Everything went wrong the first time when I built a house for my wife, who is still my wife on paper. It was her who did things she shouldn't have done that destroyed that. I fell in love again with my dream girl. Everything was great between us for a very long time. After we built the house, everything was great. She was still my dream girl, never changing. Then I made a mistake, thinking about her future, and invested in something, and I didn't lose all my money, and it failed. I lost all my money because it was successful. Successful enough where she was emboldened to actually turn back into the person she really was, which was not the girl I fell in love with. People can fail and change in multitudes of different ways, and how she changed was the most despicable and most disheartening change I ever witnessed in my life. To go from being my dream, my absolute dream, at my every beck and call every second of the day, and I was taking care of her very well. I always respected her and loved her, always supported her, but she was too emboldened after I invested money into something for her. It worked. So all of a sudden she wasn't my dream anymore. She's just a girl who I'm living with, who's not doing anything like she used to do. And that was the worst thing to ever happen in my life, and I'm still sad about it today. My advice to anybody in the Philippines would be, don't do what I did. First, don't put your girlfriend or your wife in a position where she can change on you, even if you have the best intentions like I had. I really had the best intentions, but I put her in a position where she could change on me, and she changed on me, and it ended my world. As cruel as it might sound, what I should have done was not even think about what would have happened to her if something happened to me. If I ever thought about that, things wouldn't have changed and I'd still be there now. I suppose at least I'm still living in the Philippines. I'm in a relationship actually at the moment, but it's not the same. At least the relationship works in the way I need it to work. I just really wish I was still with her more than anything because she was my world, but she changed on me and she ruined my life because of it.